So the International Criminal Court has an arrest warrant out for Russian President Vladimir Putin on war crimes charges. Cool, but you know there are much bigger fish in the wider sea of war crimes, right? Okay, let's get some important disclaimers out of the way first. There is no justification for starting any war of any kind for any reason. War is wrong. Invading a sovereign country is wrong. So Putin was wrong to invade Ukraine, even if he argues that he was first provoked, pushed and cornered by the United States and its allies into an existential conflict. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is right to defend his own country, but wrong not to sue for peace. Wrong to let the US use him as a convenient tool to host an endless proxy war between Washington and Moscow, paid for by US dollars and the blood of both Ukrainians and Russians, not Americans. And the US is wrong to assume it can keep pumping billions of dollars in taxpayers' money into Ukraine to keep the war going indefinitely, refusing to entertain any peace overtures as long as only Ukrainian and Russian blood is spilled. They're all wrong, wrong, wrong. Right. After that little preamble, let's talk about the International Criminal Court, or ICC, issuing an arrest warrant for Putin on war crimes charges. The ICC, the same hallowed organization up in its ivory tower at The Hague, which has done nothing, nada, zilch so far about much bigger war criminals, still sitting pretty because of the perpetual immunity that only Western leaders get to enjoy. The ICC, the same great enforcer of international justice with only enough guts and political backbone to hunt easier, darker-skinned game on the African continent, or sometimes in Eastern Europe when they fall out of grace with Western powers. The ICC, the same invertebrate entity that the US is now applauding for going after Putin hard while remaining permanently flaccid on America's litany of war crimes. What is the ICC's excuse for ignoring elephants in the room like former US President George W. Bush and former British Prime Minister Tony Blair for what they did to Iraq? We are now marking the 20th anniversary of the Iraq invasion and the biblical scale of death and destruction inflicted upon the Iraqi people by these modern-day perpetrators of genocide. The fact that hideous deplorables like Bush and Blair are now swanning around as wise and gentle elder statesmen with the moral temerity of all people to condemn the invasion of Ukraine is the ultimate obscenity in the long, sordid history of Western global domination. On the 20th anniversary of the annihilation of Iraq, they still talk about it as a war based on intelligence failure, in assuming that Saddam Hussein was stockpiling weapons of mass destruction. What intelligence failure? The only failure of intelligence was on the part of those who bought the bovine feces and blatant lies that the US and its cronies sold them to justify this eternal atrocity. Dirty lies that were dutifully parroted by the compliant stenographers in the Anglo-Saxon media. Shame on everyone who supported the wanton destruction of Iraq. Shame on anyone cheering Putin's indictment while giving a free pass to smirking mass murderers like Bush. And last but not least, shame on the ICC for being a pathetic puppet of Western imperialism. You know, whenever I talk like this, pointing out basic facts to illustrate the double standards and sheer hypocrisy of Western virtue signaling, the counter is always, oh, that's just whataboutism. Accusing someone of whataboutism has become the default excuse for duplicity, the glasshouse refuge for sanctimonious scoundrels. Let me put it this way, and pardon the crude analogy, because this is the only kind of language some people understand at the end of the day. When you're a habitual wife-beater, and every time I see her she's sporting a black eye, you do not get to lecture me on sensitivity, because I sometimes forget to buy my girlfriend a Valentine's Day gift. What about, that's right, you heard me, what about your wife?